March 4, 1944, Tempelhof Airfield, Berlin, Germany. Oberst Heinrich Müller studied the intelligence report with barely concealed disdain. At 42, with silver threading his temples and dueling scars marking his jaw, he looked every inch the Prussian warrior. "Look at this," Müller said, tossing the document across his oak desk. "The Americans think their P-51 can escort bombers all the way to Berlin." Major Kurt Schneider, his operations officer, nodded sharply. "They lack the discipline for extended combat operations. Their pilots have no fighting spirit." Hauptmann Wilhelm Fischer, chief intelligence analyst, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Herr Oberst, the range estimates appear credible. With drop tanks, they calculate 1,650 miles combat radius." But Müller waved him off dismissively. "We have destroyed them over Hamburg at 8:1 ratios. We shot down 47 bombers over Schweinfurt with minimal losses. At Regensburg, 60 bombers fell to our guns while we lost 12 aircraft." The mathematics were undeniable. German tactical superiority had been proven in blood and wreckage across the Reich. What Müller didn't know, what none of them could have known as they reviewed charts in that paneled office, was that the P-51 Mustang would destroy the Luftwaffe fighter force within 90 days. The numbers would become catastrophic. 15:1 kill ratios. 4,950 enemy fighters destroyed in 3 months. 2,200 German pilots killed. The confident dismissal in that Berlin office would become history's most expensive miscalculation, measured in 58,000 Luftwaffe casualties. The Luftwaffe's confidence rested on documented superiority accumulated through 3 years of aerial combat. At Schweinfurt on October 14, 1943, German fighters destroyed 60 bombers with acceptable losses, an 8:1 exchange ratio that validated tactical doctrine. At Regensburg on August 17, 1943, the ratio reached 5:1 in Germany's favor, with Me-109s demonstrating devastating effectiveness against unescorted formations. Over Hamburg that summer, Me-109s and FW-190s achieved 6:1 kill ratios against unescorted bombers attempting daylight raids. American losses averaged 12% per mission, an unsustainable attrition rate that forced temporary cessation of deep penetration raids in October 1943. The statistics proved German fighter superiority beyond doubt. German equipment specifications appeared decisive across all performance categories. The Messerschmitt Bf 109G6 carried twin 13 MG 131 machine guns with 600 rounds per gun and one 20 MG 150-120 cannon with 200 rounds, total firepower 1,320 rounds per minute. Maximum speed, 386 mph at 22,640 feet. Service ceiling, 39,370 feet. Rate of climb, 3,100 feet per minute. Wing loading, 40 pounds per square foot. The Focke-Wulf FW-190A8 mounted 420 MG 150-120 cannons with 250 rounds each plus two 13 MG 131s with 475 rounds each. Combined rate 1,680 rounds per minute. Maximum speed, 408 mph at 20,670 feet. Climb rate, 2,350 feet per minute. Roll rate, 150 degrees per second, superior to all Allied fighters. Both aircraft featured superior roll rates and vertical performance compared to existing American fighters, giving German pilots decisive advantages in combat maneuvers. Recent American failures reinforced German calculations about strategic bombing's futility. The P-47 Thunderbolt's combat radius of 375 miles with drop tanks fell 480 miles short of Berlin, leaving bomber formations defenseless over the most critical targets. The P-38 Lightning suffered catastrophic engine failures in cold weather above 20,000 feet, losing 48 aircraft to mechanical problems in December 1943 alone without enemy action. Turbocharger intercoolers iced at altitude, causing complete power loss. Fighter Escort terminated at the German border, leaving bombers defenseless for 840 miles of hostile airspace over industrial targets. Bomber losses exceeded replacement capacity by 47 aircraft weekly during autumn 1943 operations. The Americans had attempted various escort strategies, all failing against German tactical superiority and geographic realities. The mathematics were straightforward. No existing Allied fighter could escort bombers to Berlin and engage in sustained combat. Therefore, daylight strategic bombing campaigns against German industry would fail, forcing the Allies to accept negotiated settlement or abandon the strategic air war entirely. Oberst Heinrich Müller's personal combat record exemplified Luftwaffe excellence accumulated over 4 years of continuous warfare. 47 confirmed kills since Poland 1939, including 12 four-engine bombers, 18 fighters, and 17 ground attack aircraft. Knight's Cross with Oak Leaves awarded May 1943 for extraordinary valor destroying Allied aircraft. He had flown Bf-109s over Poland in September 1939, France in May 1940, Britain during the Battle of Britain in summer 1940, and Russia from 1941 through 1943. His tactical doctrine, refined through 847 combat sorties, emphasized vertical attacks from 3,000 feet above bomber formations, diving through escort screens at 450 mph indicated airspeed, firing 3-second bursts totaling 90 rounds into cockpits and wing roots where structural weakness concentrated damage, then climbing away using superior power-to-weight ratios that American fighters couldn't match. His unit, Jagdschwader 53 Pickaz, claimed 198 bomber kills between June and December 1943 while losing 32 pilots, a 6-to-1 exchange ratio validating their aggressive tactics. Müller personally trained 43 pilots, establishing standardized procedures that maximized lethality while minimizing exposure to defensive fire. Hauptmann Wilhelm Fischer's intelligence analysis warned about American production capacity threatening to overwhelm German tactical advantages, but his concerns were systematically dismissed by commanders unwilling to acknowledge strategic vulnerability. Fischer had documented that American aircraft factories produced 7,200 fighters monthly compared to Germany's 1,850, a 3-9-1 disadvantage that would inevitably result in numerical superiority regardless of pilot skill differentials. He calculated that North American Aviation's single Inglewood facility manufactured 475 P-51s monthly, exceeding Germany's total Messerschmitt production of 540 Me-109s across 17 dispersed factories. His reports on aluminum allocation showed Americans possessed 15 times German reserves, 920,000 tons annually versus 234,000 tons. Fischer's analysis extended to petroleum. American aviation fuel production reached 42 billion gallons annually, while German synthetic fuel plants produced 2.8 billion gallons. These material disparities meant America could sustain combat losses indefinitely, while Germany faced inevitable attrition of irreplaceable resources. Müller classified these assessments as defeatist propaganda designed to undermine morale. "Numbers mean nothing without fighting spirit," he declared at weekly staff meetings. "History proves 1 German pilot equals 5 Americans in combat effectiveness. We defeated France despite numerical inferiority. We drove Britain from continental Europe despite their industrial capacity. American productive capacity cannot compensate for tactical inadequacy and lack of warrior spirit." Lieutenant Hans Steiner's frontline experience confirmed tactical dominance through direct combat observations spanning 6 months of intensive operations. At 23, he had shot down 9 bombers and 4 fighters since August 1943, accumulating 247 combat hours across 164 sorties. Flying from Wiesbaden-Erbenheim airfield, he described typical encounters with clinical precision. The Americans fly rigid formations dictated by their bomber protection doctrine. Their discipline makes them predictable in tactical responses. We attack from 6 o'clock high at 28,000 feet, diving at 450 mph to build speed, fire concentrated bursts at 300 meters range where defensive fire is ineffective, break away in vertical climbs before their gunners can establish tracking solutions. Their P-47s try to pursue but lack speed at altitude above 25,000 feet where we operate. We climb away effortlessly using our 1-4-1 power-to-weight advantage. On February 20, 1944, Steiner's 4-aircraft swarm destroyed 3 B-17s in 4 minutes without loss, standard performance for well-executed attacks. His gun camera footage showed accurate deflection shooting accounting for 280 mph closure rates, massive structural damage to bomber wings and fuselages, and burning wreckage tumbling through cloud layers at 22,000 feet. The mathematics seemed irrefutable. Superior aircraft, superior training, superior tactics, and home territory advantage guaranteed German air superiority indefinitely. Inglewood, California, November 1943. James Kindleberger walked through North American Aviation's assembly building where P-51 Mustangs materialized with industrial precision that defied traditional aircraft manufacturing assumptions. This single facility, occupying 43 acres of floor space, produced 17 aircraft daily through 3 shifts operating continuously. Every 85 minutes, another fighter rolled off the production line fully assembled, fueled, armed, and combat-ready, requiring only ferry pilots to deliver them to East Coast ports for Atlantic transit. Workers operated around the clock in 3 8-hour shifts, transforming 2,840 pounds of aluminum sheet, 1,200 pounds of steel components, 340 feet of electrical wiring, 680 rivets, and 240 specialized fasteners into long-range air superiority fighters capable of escorting bombers to Berlin and engaging Luftwaffe fighters with decisive advantages. Production progression demonstrated unprecedented industrial scaling. In April 1941, America produced just 47 P-51s monthly, handcrafted prototypes requiring 22,000 man-hours each with extensive hand-fitting of components, individual engine break-in procedures, and customized adjustments for each aircraft. By March 1943, production reached 325 monthly as assembly techniques improved through implementation of interchangeable parts, standardized tooling, specialized workstations, and division of labor principles adapted from automotive manufacturing. By November 1943, North American Aviation's Inglewood plant alone was producing 475 P-51DS monthly, having reduced construction time to 8,400 man-hours per aircraft through implementation of moving assembly lines, pre-assembled subcomponents, automated drilling jigs, and hydraulic riveting systems. This single facility was producing more fighters monthly than the entire German Messerschmitt production network spanning 17 factories across occupied Europe, from Regensburg to Wiener Neustadt, employing 84,000 workers compared to Inglewood's 42,000 employees. Margaret Foster, previously a seamstress from Pasadena specializing in wedding gowns and formal wear, now operated pneumatic rivet guns on the P-51's fuselage assembly line, installing 3,247 rivets per 8-hour shift, with precision tolerances of 0.003 inches, measured by quality inspectors using go-no-go gauges. Her pneumatic riveter fired at 180 rivets hourly, each rivet requiring 4.2 seconds including positioning, drilling pilot holes when necessary, inserting rivet shanks, and setting heads to specified compression ratios. She produced more structural connections in one shift than an entire 12-man Messerschmitt assembly team managed weekly at the Augsburg facility. Margaret earned $42.50 weekly, substantially above the $28 national average for women workers and triple her seamstress income. She had trained for 4 weeks under experienced riveters, learning blueprint reading, metal stress principles, rivet spacing calculations, and quality control standards that exceeded German specifications. Her station incorporated precision jigs that automatically positioned fuselage panels, reducing installation time from 12 minutes to 90 seconds per section, while ensuring dimensional accuracy within 0.01 inches. When asked about her work's significance by a war production board photographer, she simply noted that yesterday's fuselage was probably over Germany today protecting American boys from German fighters. She produced more combat aircraft components in 1 8-hour shift than Focke-Wulf's Bremen facility, employing 6,200 workers, assembled in a 40-hour week. Robert Washington, from Detroit, Michigan, previously employed at Ford's River Rouge steel mill as a crane operator, operated massive hydraulic presses that stamped P-51 wingskins at 14 pieces per hour, each weighing 42 pounds and measuring 12 feet by 4 feet, with complex compound curves requiring 2,400 tons of forming pressure. His press exerted forces equivalent to stacking 480 automobiles onto a single square foot, forming 0.040-inch aluminum sheet into compound curves with dimensional accuracy within 0.010 inches measured against master templates. His single station's daily output of 112 wing skins, operating continuously across 3 shifts with different operators, exceeded the combined production of Messerschmitt's Augsburg and Regensburg plants, which together produced 84 wing sets daily despite employing 12 times as many workers across twice as much floor space. Washington had worked at Ford's River Rouge complex for 8 years before joining North American Aviation at $54 weekly, attracted by defense industry wages, overtime opportunities paying time and a half, and patriotic motivation following Pearl Harbor. He operated beside 3 similar presses in a 24-hour rotation, producing 336 wing skins daily from the 4-press bay. This volume supplied complete wing assemblies for 48 fighters daily. His station alone generated enough components to equip 3 full Luftwaffe Jagdschwader of 48 aircraft each monthly, more than German factories delivered to frontline units after accounting for losses, maintenance groundings, and operational attrition. Charles Wilson, $1-a-year man from General Electric volunteering executive expertise for nominal compensation, managed quality control systems that inspected every component using go-no-go gauges, precision micrometers accurate to 0.0001 inches, and X-ray fluoroscopy for internal stress detection, invisible to visual inspection. His 30 inspector team examined 14,000 parts daily, rejecting 340 pieces for dimensional errors, metallurgical defects identified through hardness testing, or surface imperfections indicating internal flaws. Wilson had implemented statistical process control adapted from General Electric's lamp manufacturing division, tracking defect rates across production shifts, identifying systematic problems before they propagated through assembly, and implementing corrective actions within hours of detection. His rejection standards exceeded German specifications by factors of 3 in dimensional tolerance, 5 in surface finish, and 7 in material properties. Components that would have been acceptable in Messerschmitt production, meeting Luftwaffe technical specifications, were scrapped and recycled at Inglewood for failing to meet North American Aviation's internal standards. This quality emphasis produced aircraft with mean time between failure rates 5 times better than Luftwaffe equivalents, reducing maintenance requirements, extending service life, and improving combat reliability. German fighters required major engine overhauls every 60 hours. P-51s operated 180 hours between overhauls. This reliability advantage multiplied combat effectiveness because American aircraft spent more time operational rather than grounded awaiting maintenance. Americans discarded 2,800 pounds of aluminum scrapped daily from normal production operations, including trimming excess material from stamped components, drilling out misaligned holes, and removing damaged sections during quality control failures. Germany allocated 340 pounds monthly to each fighter production facility for all manufacturing purposes, rationing metal by weight to maximize utilization. The waste from trimming P-51 wing skins exceeded the total aluminum allocation for Focke-Wulf's entire Marienburg plant, which employed 8,400 workers producing 38 FW-190s monthly. Workers threw away metal shavings that German engineers rationed by the gram, measuring carefully to extract maximum utility from scarce materials, implementing recovery programs that collected metal dust from machine shop floors. The cafeteria discarded more food daily than Tempelhof Airfield's fighter group received in weekly rations. Kitchen waste included 340 pounds of meat, 180 pounds of fresh vegetables, 95 gallons of milk, and 240 pounds of bread. Tempelhof's pilots received 2.2 pounds of meat, weekly supplemented with substitute coffee made from roasted barley and dried vegetables rehydrated from powder. The aluminum scrap generated from drilling mounting holes in a single day's P-51 production run, totaling 840 pounds of metal chips and shavings, could have built 3 complete Bf-109 airframes using German conservation protocols that specified minimum material usage in every component design. The ammunition expended in quality control testing exceeded German combat allocations by staggering margins illustrating fundamentally different resource availability. Each completed P-51 underwent bore sighting verification, firing 240 rounds per gun, 1,440 rounds per aircraft, to validate harmonization and confirmed that all 6 machine guns converged at 300 yards as specified. Quality control rejected and discarded ammunition showing primers seated more than 0.003 inches below specification, powder charges outside 0.5 grain tolerance, or projectile seating depth varying by more than 0.008 inches. Daily ammunition disposal from testing procedures and quality failures totaled 31,000 rounds. Jagdgeschwader 53 received 28,000 rounds monthly for all combat operations across 48 aircraft. This single aspect of American quality assurance consumed more ammunition than an entire German fighter group expended operationally, including combat missions, training flights, and gun harmonization. The disparity illustrated incomparable productive depths, separating the combatants in every category of war material. Hauptmann Wilhelm Fischer reviewed classified reports from Abwehr agents, documenting American production capacity that military leadership refused to acknowledge. One document described assembly techniques at the Inglewood facility: automated riveting reducing installation time by 73%, pre-assembled subcomponents arriving from subcontractors ready for installation, and modular construction that reduced build time from 22,000 man-hours to 8,400 man-hours per aircraft. Fischer calculated that this single facility's monthly output of 475 fighters exceeded Germany's combined Me-109 and FW-190 production of 1,850 aircraft from 17 factories. He presented these findings to Reichsmarschall Göring in January 1944, warning that American productive capacity would overwhelm German tactical skill through sheer numerical advantage, combined with aircraft performance matching, or exceeding Luftwaffe fighters. Göring dismissed the analysis as defeatist propaganda designed to undermine morale, attributing the reports to Allied disinformation campaigns, and reassigned Fischer to administrative duties reviewing fuel allocation reports. The mathematics were systematically ignored because acknowledging them required admitting the war was unwinnable, a psychological impossibility for leadership committed to total victory ideology. March 6, 1944, Brunswick, Germany, 1347 hours. Lieutenant Hans Steiner was climbing through 24,000 feet in his Bf 109 G6, engine temperature nominal at 85 degrees Celsius, oil pressure steady at 4.2 bar, when he spotted the bomber formation 30 miles distant, identified by distinctive contrails marking their track toward Hanover's industrial complexes. Standard intercept profile dictated by months of refined tactical doctrine. Climb to 28,000 feet to establish altitude advantage. Position up sun to blind enemy gunners. Coordinate with wingman for mutual support. Then dive through escort screen targeting lead bombers to disrupt formation integrity. At 1349 hours, Steiner rolled inverted to begin his attack run, pushing throttle to combat emergency power, developing 1,475 horsepower at 2,800 RPM. At 1349 hours plus 45 seconds, descending through 26,000 feet at 430 mph indicated airspeed, he spotted aircraft he initially misidentified as P-47 Thunderbolts based on size and single-engine configuration. But these fighters demonstrated 370 mph cruise speed, 25,000 feet, physically impossible for Thunderbolts which cruised at 290 mph at similar altitudes. Their silver finish gleamed distinctly against cumulus clouds 8,000 feet below, creating visual contrast that violated German camouflage doctrine emphasizing mottled gray-green schemes for concealment. At 1350 hours, Steiner committed to his attack, pushing throttle to combat emergency power, producing 1,800 horsepower for 3-minute duration, diving at 450 mph toward the bomber stream's lead elements 2 miles ahead. Standard tactical procedure called for firing at 300 meters, delivering 3-second bursts totaling 90 rounds from 20 cannon and 78 rounds from 13 machine guns, then breaking away in vertical climb using power advantages. At 1350 hours plus 18 seconds, descending through 23,000 feet, tracers flashed past his canopy from astern at 12 o'clock level, impossible geometry for defensive fire from bombers 4,000 feet below his altitude. A P-51 had reversed onto his tail with impossible speed and climb rate, matching his dive angle while maintaining firing solution through violent evasive maneuvers. At 1350 hours plus 23 seconds, multiple 50 caliber rounds shattered his starboard wing root, severing control cables and puncturing fuel tank number 2. At 1350 hours plus 27 seconds, with aircraft rolling uncontrollably to starboard and losing altitude at 3,200 feet per minute, his Messerschmitt Bf 109G6 was effectively destroyed as combat-capable aircraft. Elapsed time from initial engagement to catastrophic damage, 27 seconds. Kill time, 27 seconds. Steiner bilayed out at 18,000 feet, deploying parachute at 16,500 feet after clearing vertical stabilizer by 3 feet, watching his Messerschmitt spin into clouds trailing white glycol coolant and black oil smoke from destroyed engine. His wingman, Unteroffizier Karl Mayer, 20 years old with 48 combat hours experience, attempted to engage the P-51 that had shot down Steiner, but was himself engaged by a second Mustang executing bracket maneuver from Mayer's blind spot. Mayer's aircraft was shot down at 1351 hours after 32-second engagement. Kill time, 32 seconds. Mayer did not survive, aircraft impacting at 480 mph into forested terrain without parachute deployment. The remaining 6 aircraft from Steiner's 8 aircraft swarm broke off immediately, diving for cloud cover at 8,000 feet using emergency power that consumed fuel at unsustainable rates. 2 more fell during the disengagement phase. At 1352 hours, Oberfeldwebel Ernst Cox FW 190A8 destroyed by concentrated fire from pursuing P-51, structural failure of port wing at route. Kill time, 19 seconds. At 1352 hours plus 45 seconds, Feldwebel Otto Bauer's Bf 109G6 destroyed, direct hits to cockpit area killing pilot instantly. Kill time, 22 seconds. Total engagement duration from initial contact to final aircraft destruction, 3 minutes 47 seconds. Luftwaffe losses, 4 aircraft destroyed with complete structural failure, 3 pilots killed instantly or in aircraft crashes, 1 pilot captured after parachute descent into Allied-controlled territory. American losses, 0 aircraft destroyed, 0 pilots killed, 0 aircraft damaged requiring more than field-level maintenance. Kill ratio, 4-0 without considering damaged aircraft or partial victories. The ammunition expended in this brief engagement, approximately 2,400 rounds of .50 caliber weighing 360 pounds, exceeded Jagdschwader 53's monthly allocation for training exercises at their Wiesbaden-Erbenheim base, where pilots received 40 rounds monthly for practice firing due to ammunition shortages affecting all Luftwaffe units. Steiner spent 3 days trudging through heavy snow 40 centimeters deep to friendly lines, evading American advance reconnaissance units, surviving on emergency rations containing 1,200 calories daily, far below the 3,400 calories required for winter survival in combat conditions. He reported to Tempelhof Airfield on March 9, debriefing to intelligence officers about aircraft with performance characteristics exceeding intelligence estimates derived from captured P-51B models tested at Richlin Proving Grounds. The P-51D accelerated through my dive despite me using combat emergency power. It matched my 109's roll rate of 150 degrees per second. The pilot maintained accurate firing solution through a 7G brake maneuver that should have defeated tracking. This wasn't the American fighters we encountered throughout 1943. These aircraft possess complete performance advantages across all flight regimes: speed, climb, range, firepower, and maneuverability. Our tactical doctrine assumes we can disengage at will using superior climb performance. Against P-51s, disengagement is impossible unless they permit it. His debriefing officer noted the claims, but classified them as combat stress exaggeration, typical of pilots who had been shot down and were unconsciously justifying defeat through exaggeration of enemy capabilities. Steiner was reassigned to Reichsverteidigung duties, intercepting unescorted bombers over eastern Germany, where P-51 range limitations prevented escort coverage, operations with lower survival risks pending psychological recovery from combat trauma. Oberst Heinrich Müller reviewed Steiner's encounter report with professional skepticism developed through 24 years of military service. 4 aircraft lost to a single enemy fighter strained credibility beyond acceptable parameters. Steiner is exhausted from continuous operations. Transfer him to instructional duties for 60-day rest period allowing psychological recovery. The loss rates seemed anomalous, attributed to pilot error compounded by inexperience among newer pilots rather than systematic aircraft inferiority. Müller calculated that even if American fighters had reached Brunswick, which intelligence indicated was geographically improbable, they would lack fuel reserves for sustained combat operations. Standard tactical doctrine assumed 450-mile combat radius for P-47 Thunderbolts and P-38 Lightnings, based on documented performance in previous engagements. The mathematics showed Brunswick lay 420 miles from English bases, placing it at extreme escort range. Therefore, P-51s must be operating at absolute maximum range with minimal combat reserves, vulnerable to aggressive interception tactics that force them to jettison drop tanks and withdraw to preserve fuel for return flights. Müller issued standing orders to press attacks aggressively, predicting American escorts would withdraw after brief engagements, leaving bombers vulnerable to coordinated assault. What Müller didn't calculate, because the necessary intelligence hadn't reached operational units despite Fischer's warnings, was the P-51D's actual combat radius. 850 miles with two 108-gallon drop tanks plus internal fuel capacity of 269 gallons, sufficient for Berlin missions, with 45 minutes of combat time at full military power burning 18 gallons per minute. The Packard V-1650-7 Merlin engine's specific fuel consumption of 0.48 pounds per horsepower-hour at cruise settings gave the Mustang 3 hours of cruise endurance at 362 mph true airspeed plus combat, reserves sufficient for extended engagements. American pilots had standing orders from 8th Air Force Headquarters to engage German fighters aggressively throughout the bomber stream's route, maintaining continuous pressure that prevented coordinated attacks from developing, destroying German fighters before they could reach bombing altitudes, and pursuing retreating aircraft to ensure kills rather than damaged aircraft that returned to service. The tactical implications were revolutionary. For the first time in strategic bombing campaigns, heavy bombers possessed escort coverage throughout their entire mission profile from English bases to target 600 miles inside Germany and return, with sufficient combat reserves to engage in sustained dogfights rather than defensive posturing that had characterized earlier escort operations. Luftwaffe intelligence dismissed the initial Brunswick reports as isolated incidents attributable to pilot error, equipment malfunction, or statistical anomalies within acceptable combat loss parameters. Oberst Müller's staff analysis, conducted by 3 officers over 2 days reviewing gun camera footage, radio transcripts, and survivor testimonies, concluded that combat losses remained within historical parameters, showing no statistically significant deviation from established trends documented across 1943 operations. 1 aircraft lost per 12 sorties represented normal attrition rates for aggressive interception tactics against defended bomber formations employing mass defensive firepower. The Luftwaffe had sustained these loss levels throughout 1943 while achieving favorable exchange ratios averaging 4:2, 1 against unescorted bombers and 2:1, 1 against escorted formations. Mathematical projections based on historical data showed sustainable operations indefinitely at current casualty rates, with pilot training programs producing sufficient replacements at 60 pilots monthly against average monthly losses of 43 pilots. The analysis specifically rejected claims about superior American fighter performance, attributing losses to pilot inexperience among replacement pilots and tactical errors during engagements. Hauptmann Wilhelm Fischer reported to Luftwaffe headquarters on March 11 with updated production statistics compiled from Swedish intelligence sources monitoring Allied shipping, decoded Allied communications intercepts, and captured documents recovered from downed bombers. American fighter production: 7,200 aircraft monthly across all types including P-51 Mustangs, P-47 Thunderbolts, P-38 Lightnings, and naval fighters. German fighter production: 1,850 aircraft monthly combining Messerschmitt Me-109 and Focke-Wulf FW-190 output across all variants including fighter, fighter bomber, and reconnaissance configurations. This 3-9-1 production advantage meant Americans could sustain combat losses at 4:1 1 ratios indefinitely while achieving numerical superiority within 6 months through accumulated surplus production exceeding loss rates. Fischer emphasized that P-51 Mustang production specifically had reached 475 monthly from North American Aviation's Inglewood facility, with additional production planned at Dallas facilities targeting 380 monthly by June 1944, bringing total P-51 output to 855 monthly. A single American factory exceeded Germany's entire Messerschmitt production network, spanning 17 facilities. German fighter reserves stood at 1,240 operational aircraft on March 1, 1944, with 340 in maintenance, 180 in transit, and 95 being repaired from combat damage. American reserves totaled 8,600 fighters in England, organized into 56 squadrons, plus production surpluses of 1,800 fighters monthly exceeding operational losses, creating strategic reserve accumulation, permitting sustained high-tempo operations indefinitely. American production supremacy extended beyond aircraft quantities to every material category supporting sustained combat operations. Aluminum production. Americans generated 920,000 tons annually from bauxite mines in Arkansas, hydroelectric smelters in the Pacific Northwest, and Great Lakes processing facilities. Germany produced 234,000 tons, including Norwegian production from occupied facilities. Aviation fuel. American output reached 42 billion gallons yearly from Texas refineries, California facilities, and synthetic plants, plus high-octane aviation fuel at 4.8 billion gallons. Germany produced 2.8 billion gallons total, including synthetic production from 19 plants subject to Allied bombing. Pilot training capacity. Americans graduated 96,000 pilots in 1943 from training facilities spanning 27 states, with 450 flight hours average before combat assignments including instrument training, gunnery practice, and tactical formation flying. Germany graduated 14,200 pilots with 112 flight hours average training, reduced from 240 hours in 1942 due to fuel shortages limiting training flights. A single American training facility, Randolph Field in Texas, produced more pilots annually, 4,800 graduates, than Germany's entire training infrastructure spanning 12 flight schools. The productive disparities appeared in every category examined. Munitions, 12, 1 advantage, vehicles 8, 1, replacement engines 9, 1, spare parts 15, 1, tools 11, 1, and technical personnel 7, 1. These ratios meant Germany faced systematic material degradation across all combat systems while America maintained equipment at peak performance through unlimited spare parts availability. German tactical responses failed systematically against P-51 numerical and performance advantages. They tried aggressive head-on attacks against escort fighters, employing frontal assault doctrine that had succeeded against B-17 formations. The Americans countered with superior firepower, their 6.50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns delivering 5,400 rounds per minute, combined cyclic rate compared to Messerschmitt's 1,320 rounds per minute, creating 4-1 firepower advantage in head-on engagements where first hits determined outcomes. They attempted diving attacks from altitude, exploiting German fighters' superior climb performance at altitudes above 25,000 feet. The Americans matched their dive speed through aerodynamic refinement, the P-51's laminar-flow wing maintaining smooth airflow to 500 mph indicated airspeed, and maintained accurate firing solutions through vertical maneuvers using hydraulically boosted ailerons providing consistent roll response at high speeds. They tried standing patrols positioned up son-of-bomber routes, attempting to ambush American formations. American fighters swept ahead of bomber formations in fighter sweeps, engaging German aircraft 30 miles before they reached bomber streams, preventing coordinated attacks from developing. They attempted simultaneous attacks from multiple axes, 12 o'clock high, 6 o'clock level, 9 o'clock climbing, dividing American attention. American escort tactics employed stacked formations with high, level, and low elements separated by 2,000-foot altitude intervals that covered each other through overlapping fields of fire, preventing coordinated assaults from penetrating to bomber streams without fighting through multiple defensive layers. March 15, 1944, Leipzig, Germany, 14-12 hours. 28 Bf-109 G6s from Jagdgeschwader 53 intercepted a bomber formation of 42 B-17s, escorted by 36 P-51 DS from the 357th Fighter Group. German fighters, organized into 7 4-aircraft Schwamm, attempted coordinated attacks from 6 and 12 o'clock positions simultaneously, doctrine calling for splitting American defensive attention between multiple threats. At 14-14 hours, German fighters committed to attack runs from their respective positions, descending from 28,000 feet at combat power. At 14-15 hours, P-51s from high cover element engaged the 12 o'clock attackers, executing bracket maneuvers that forced German aircraft into defensive turns. 6 Messerschmitts destroyed in 90 seconds of concentrated combat. At 14-15 hours, Hauptmann-Georg Hartmann's Bf-109 G6 destroyed by concentrated fire from 2 P-51s executing scissors maneuver, aircraft breaking apart at wing root under 7G loading combined with battle damage. Kill time, 14 seconds. At 14-15 hours plus 30 seconds, Lieutenant Fritz Weber's Bf-109 G6 destroyed, direct cockpit hits killing pilot, aircraft entering inverted spin. Kill time, 18 seconds. At 14-15 hours plus 48 seconds, Oberfeldwebel Paul Schmidt's Bf-109 G14 destroyed, engine fire spreading to fuel tanks, catastrophic explosion. Kill time, 12 seconds. At 14-16 hours, Unteroffizier Hans Becker's Bf-109 G6 destroyed, structural failure of tail assembly, aircraft tumbling. Kill time, 16 seconds. At 14-16 hours plus 15 seconds, Feldwebel Kurt Adler's Bf-109 G6 destroyed, control surfaces shot away, pilot unable to maintain controlled flight. Kill time, 21 seconds. At 14-16 hours plus 30 seconds, Lieutenant Werner Klein's Bf-109 G6 destroyed, port wing severed by concentrated fire. Kill time, 19 seconds. The 6 o'clock element attacking from astern fared no better against American tactical responses. P-51s executed vertical reversals, using superior power-to-weight ratios at medium altitudes to reposition from defensive to offensive posture in seconds, a maneuver impossible for P-47s with their heavier wing loading. At 14-16 hours plus 30 seconds, 5 more Messerschmitts fell to coordinated attacks by P-51 elements working in pairs. At 14-16 hours plus 42 seconds, Major Wilhelm Batz's Bf-109 G6 destroyed. Kill time, 18 seconds. At 14-16 hours plus 58 seconds, Oberleutnant Ernst Süss's aircraft destroyed. Kill time, 16 seconds. At 14-17 hours plus 14 seconds, Hauptmann Otto Fernikold's aircraft destroyed. Kill time, 21 seconds. At 14-17 hours plus 31 seconds, Lieutenant Heinrich Ross's aircraft destroyed. Kill time, 17 seconds. At 14-17 hours plus 49 seconds, Feldwebel Joseph Wormhiller's aircraft destroyed. Kill time, 22 seconds. Total engagement time from initial contact to final loss, 4 minutes 20 seconds. German losses: 11 aircraft destroyed with catastrophic structural failure, 9 pilots killed instantly or in crashes, 2 pilots captured after parachute descent. American losses: 1 P-51D damaged by 20 cannon fragments, pilot returned safely to base, aircraft repaired in 36 hours using readily available spare parts. Kill ratio: 11-0 for destroyed aircraft, 11-1 including damaged aircraft. The ammunition expended in this engagement: approximately 18,400 rounds of .50 caliber, totaling 2,760 pounds. Exceeded Jagdgeschwader 53's combat allocation for their entire monthly operations across 48 aircraft. Hauptmann Wilhelm Fischer presented his final comprehensive intelligence assessment to Luftwaffe High Command on March 18, 1944, documenting what he termed systematic destruction of German fighter capability through American industrial and tactical superiority. He had compiled data from 53 major engagements between March 6 and March 17, showing German losses of 247 fighters destroyed versus 32 American losses, a devastating 7-1 disadvantage reversing historical ratios. Production data showed Americans manufacturing 240 fighters daily across all types, while Germany produced 62 daily combining Me-109 and FW-190 variants. Current loss rates averaging 23 fighters daily meant Germany would be unable to maintain fighter strength above 800 operational aircraft by May 1944, insufficient to defend against sustained bombing campaigns, requiring minimum 1,200 fighters for adequate coverage of German airspace. Fischer calculated that continued operations at current attrition rates, assuming American tactics remained constant and German responses didn't improve significantly, would reduce the Luftwaffe fighter force to combat ineffectiveness within 90 days, defined as fewer than 400 operational aircraft unable to contest American air superiority over strategic targets. His analysis included recommendations for defensive tactics minimizing casualties, avoid combat with P-51s, focus on unescorted bomber formations, husband forces for critical defensive operations, implement improved pilot training, and accelerate jet fighter development. His analysis was classified top secret, filed without action, and Fischer was transferred to administrative duties processing fuel allocation requests. Mathematical reality confronted institutional denial, rooted in ideological commitments, requiring belief in German superiority regardless of evidence. Oberst Heinrich Müller refused to accept Fischer's conclusions despite mounting evidence documented in daily loss reports, survivor testimonies, and tactical analysis from combat units. German pilots are superior in training, equipment, and fighting spirit. We have simply encountered well-trained enemy units led by experienced pilots. The overall situation remains favorable for achieving air superiority through aggressive tactics. He continued to order aggressive interception tactics, directing his pilots to press attacks regardless of American fighter opposition, dismissing warnings about unsustainable losses as defeatist propaganda. Müller's denial reflected institutional resistance throughout the Luftwaffe command structure, extending to Reichsmarschall Göring and operational headquarters. Acknowledging American superiority meant admitting that Germany had lost air superiority permanently over its own territory, that strategic bombing would continue unopposed, destroying industrial capacity, that the entire Luftwaffe fighter force faced systematic destruction, and that the war was unwinnable from an air power perspective. The psychological barriers to accepting defeat exceeded the mathematical evidence proving it. Leadership had invested 4 years constructing narratives of Germanic superiority, tactical excellence, and inevitable victory. Reversing these narratives required acknowledging that fundamental assumptions were wrong, decisions were mistaken, and continuation would result in certain defeat. This psychological impossibility prevented adaptation that might have mitigated catastrophe. Lieutenant Hans Steiner observed the escalation from his new posting at Reichsverteidigung headquarters in Berlin, where he processed daily operational reports from all fighter units. Daily loss reports crossed his desk showing unsustainable attrition accelerating weekly. 12 fighters lost on March 20 across 6 engagements, 15 on March 22 in 8 actions, 19 on March 24 during 11 encounters, 23 on March 26 in 9 major combats. Replacement aircraft arrived at rates of 7 daily from factories already operating at maximum capacity, with no possibility of expansion due to Allied bombing of component suppliers. The mathematics showed inevitable collapse within 60 days. Pilot losses exceeded replacement capacity even more dramatically than aircraft losses. March fatalities totaled 147 pilots killed in action or died from wounds, 48 captured and removed from operational strength, 32 wounded requiring medical evacuation for treatment exceeding 3 weeks. New pilot arrivals totaled 32 graduates from training programs already stripped to minimum duration. Training programs couldn't maintain strength against these losses even if fuel allocations permitted extended training, which they didn't. Each veteran lost reduced unit effectiveness exponentially as inexperienced replacements with 112 training hours lacked the situational awareness, tactical judgment, and combat skills to survive initial encounters against American pilots with 450 hours training plus combat experience. At North American Aviation's Inglewood facility, assembly line optimization achieved unprecedented efficiency metrics that redefined industrial warfare capabilities. Every 48 minutes, workers completed final assembly checks on another P-51D after 8,400 man-hours of distributed labor across 340 specialized workstations. Component staging areas held parts for 840 aircraft in various completion stages, from raw aluminum sheets entering initial forming processes to completed airframes awaiting final inspection. Automated systems transported assemblies between stations using overhead conveyors covering 2.4 miles of factory floor, eliminating manual material handling delays. Hydraulic lifts positioned major assemblies with precision within 0.25 inches. This single facility produced more fighters monthly, 475 aircraft, than Germany's entire aviation industry, including Messerschmitt, Focke-Wulf, Heinkel, and Junkers' combined output of 1,850 aircraft across all types encompassing fighters, bombers, transports, and trainers. Americans discarded 140 gallons of hydraulic fluid weekly during system testing and maintenance procedures. Standard operating protocol to ensure reliability meeting specifications, requiring 0 failures across 180 flight hours. Germany allocated 22 gallons monthly to each fighter group for all hydraulic servicing across 50 aircraft, rationing fluid to 0.44 gallons per aircraft monthly. Discarded fluid from validating one day's P-51 production, 20 gallons, exceeded Jagdschwader 53's quarterly allocation of 66 gallons, supporting 48 fighters. Workers threw away materials classified as critical strategic resources in German logistics planning, requiring approval from Reichsministerium für Bewaffnung und Munition for allocations exceeding monthly quotas. The disconnect between American abundance and German scarcity created incommensurate operational philosophies reflected in maintenance practices. Americans tested systems destructively, running components to failure to validate durability margins, documenting mean time between failure rates through statistical sampling of production batches. Germans nursed equipment carefully, extending service intervals through improvisation, cannibalization of damaged aircraft, and field repairs that would have violated American quality standards. This maintenance philosophy disparity meant American aircraft maintained peak performance throughout service life, while German aircraft degraded progressively as components wore beyond specification. This single aspect of logistics superiority exceeded entire tactical advantages. Workers threw away damaged propeller blades rather than repair them, implementing quality standards prohibiting any compromise in structural integrity. Nicks deeper than 0.125 inches, scratches affecting more than 2% of surface area, or dimensional variations outside 0.008-inch tolerance resulted in immediate scrapping of blades, costing $340 to manufacture using precision forging and multi-stage machining. Germany allocated $180 monthly for propeller maintenance across entire fighter groups of 48 aircraft, carefully straightening damaged blades using hydraulic presses, welding cracks with specialized techniques, and grinding stress risers to restore aerodynamic profiles within acceptable limits defined as 0.05-inch tolerance. Americans discarded more propeller blades weekly, averaging 42 blades at $340, each totaling $14,280, than German workshops repaired monthly across all fighter units in the Reich. The casual waste reflected fundamentally different economic realities rooted in productive capacity disparities. American productive capacity permitted perfectionism through component replacement rather than repair. German scarcity enforced conservation requiring maximum utilization of every manufactured item. This disparity extended throughout logistics chains, creating reliability advantages that compounded tactical superiority because American aircraft entered combat with components at 100% specification, while German aircraft operated with components at 60–70% specification after repeated repairs. The cafeteria discarded food that exceeded German military rations by staggering margins illustrating nutritional disparities affecting combat performance. Daily waste included 280 pounds of fresh vegetables including lettuce, tomatoes, carrots, and celery, compared to Luftwaffe allocations of 12 pounds weekly per 50-man unit consisting of potatoes, turnips, and cabbage. Kitchen disposal contained 160 pounds of meat trimmings including beef, pork, and chicken fat when German pilots received 2.8 pounds weekly of horse meat, synthetic protein, and preserved sausage. Coffee grounds filled 3 40-gallon containers daily, 120 gallons of genuine coffee waste. Germany allocated 2 ounces of ersatz coffee monthly per pilot, manufactured from roasted barley, chicory, and acorns, providing no caffeine. Fresh milk consumption reached 90 gallons daily, serving 3,200 workers, with 20 gallons discarded for quality concerns when containers weren't consumed within 24 hours. Luftwaffe units received powdered milk at 4 ounces, monthly, requiring reconstitution with water, often unavailable due to infrastructure damage. The nutritional disparity affected pilot performance measurably through documented effects on cognitive function, reaction time, and sustained attention. American aviators maintained optimal alertness on high-calorie diets averaging 4,200 calories daily, including fresh fruits, vegetables, meats, and dairy products. German pilots struggled with fatigue from inadequate nutrition, averaging 2,100 calories daily, compounding physical stress from continuous combat operations, psychological pressure from mounting losses, and fear of systematic annihilation witnessed daily. Aluminum scrap from one day's production run totaled 4,200 pounds, generated from trimming wingskins, producing 840 pounds of edge waste, cutting access panels, generating 620 pounds of cutouts, drilling 84,000 mounting holes, creating 380 pounds of metal chips, and removing 2,360 pounds of material during quality control failures when components failed dimensional inspection. This daily scrap total of 4,200 pounds exceeded Germany's monthly aluminum allocation to the entire Focke-Wulf-Marienburg facility of 3,800 pounds, supporting production of 38 FW-190s monthly. The scrap was immediately recycled through on-site remelting furnaces, recast into new stock within 72 hours, and returned to production with 96% material recovery efficiency. But the casual generation of such quantities illustrated productive abundance, permitting wastage that would have been catastrophic for German operations. Germany allocated aluminum in gram-measured quantities, calculating minimum material requirements using stress analysis, determining absolute structural minimums, and designing components to failure thresholds rather than safety margins. American engineers specified safety factors of 4 where German designs used factors of 2, accepting weight penalties of 280 pounds per aircraft for reliability margins, ensuring structural integrity under extreme combat loading. This design philosophy reflected resource availability. Americans could afford robust construction while Germans optimized for material conservation. Discarded ammunition from acceptance testing protocols exceeded German combat allocations by orders of magnitude, revealing productive depths incomprehensible to resource-constrained opponents. Each completed P-51 underwent bore sighting verification, firing 240 rounds per gun, totaling 1,440 rounds per aircraft. Validating harmonization, ensuring all 6 machine guns converged at 300 yards, producing 72-inch diameter impact pattern. Quality control inspectors rejected and discarded ammunition, showing primers seated more than 0.003 inches below specification, powder charges outside 0.5 grain tolerance, projectile seating depth varying by more than 0.008 inches, or case dimensions exceeding 0.002-inch tolerance in any measurement. Daily ammunition disposal from testing procedures and quality failures totaled 31,000 rounds weighing 4,650 pounds. Jagdschwader 53 received 28,000 rounds monthly for all combat operations across 48 aircraft, allocating 583 rounds per aircraft monthly for combat missions, training flights, and gun harmonization combined. This single aspect of American quality assurance consumed more ammunition weekly, 217,000 rounds, than an entire German fighter group expended operationally in 6 months. The disparity illustrated incomparable productive depths, separating the combatants in every category of war material. Americans could afford perfectionism through comprehensive testing. Germans accepted quality compromises to maximize available resources. Hauptmann Wilhelm Fischer compiled detailed analyses of captured American logistics documents recovered from a downed B-17 bombardier's briefcase, containing classified supply chain documentation. The papers revealed supply chains operating at scales beyond German comprehension, implementing redundancy and stockpiling impossible for resource-constrained military forces. 8th Air Force maintained 60-day stockpiles of all consumables including fuel, ammunition, food, and medical supplies. 120-day reserves of major components including engines, propellers, landing gear, and avionics, and pipeline inventories sufficient for 180-day operations at maximum sortie tempo assuming no resupply. German logistics operated on 7-day stockpiles with no strategic reserves beyond operational buffers, requiring continuous production and transportation to sustain combat operations. The documents showed casual redundancy throughout American systems reflecting design philosophy, assuming unlimited resources. Backup generators for backup generators providing tertiary power sources, spare parts for spare parts creating 3-deep inventory, replacement units for replacement units enabling immediate substitution. This reflected productive capacity, so overwhelming that military planners designed systems assuming unlimited resources, optimizing for reliability rather than efficiency. Fischer calculated that the industrial disparity exceeded tactical considerations in determining campaign outcomes. Germany was being buried under American productive capacity that generated material faster than combat could consume it. April 8, 1944, Berlin area, Operation Thunderclap. 72 Luftwaffe fighters from 3 Jagdgeschwader, JG-53, JG-3, and JG-11, faced 198 P-51 Mustangs escorting bomber formations targeting Berlin's Tempelhof rail marshalling yards and Siemensstadt industrial complex. The engagement lasted 17 minutes, 42 seconds, becoming the most one-sided aerial combat of the European war measured by kill ratios and ammunition expenditure. German pilots encountered systematic execution rather than aerial combat as traditionally understood. American fighters operated in coordinated elements, maintaining mutual support through pre-planned maneuvers rehearsed in training, executing bracket tactics, vertical scissors, and defensive splits with precision impossible for improvised responses. Luftwaffe units attacked individually, coordination degraded by weeks of losses that had killed 23 experienced flight leaders since March 6, replacing them with pilots having 112 training hours compared to veterans' 340 combat hours average. At 1342 hours, 24 Bf-109 G6s from JG-53 engaged from 12 o'clock high, diving from 28,000 feet at maximum power in standard attack profile targeting bomber formation lead elements. At 1343 hours plus 30 seconds, P-51s from 357th Fighter Group's high-cover element intercepted German fighters 2,000 feet above bomber altitude, executing bracket maneuvers splitting attacking force. At 1344 hours, 16 German fighters were destroyed through concentrated fire from multiple P-51s engaging each target. Kill time per aircraft averaged 14 seconds from first hits to catastrophic structural failure. At 1343 hours plus 48 seconds, Hauptmann Joseph Priller's Bf-109 G6 destroyed, aircraft breaking apart at wing root. Kill time, 12 seconds. At 1343 hours plus 59 seconds, Lieutenant Heinrich Bartels's aircraft destroyed by cockpit hits. Kill time, 11 seconds. At 1344 hours plus 14 seconds, Oberfeldwebel Walter Nowotny's aircraft destroyed, engine fire spreading. Kill time, 16 seconds. At 1344 hours plus 28 seconds, Feldwebel Erich Hartmann's aircraft destroyed, structural failure. Kill time, 14 seconds. P-51s executed bracket maneuvers forcing German fighters into crossing defensive turns that bled energy exponentially, reducing speed from 420 mph to 280 mph in seconds, rendering them vulnerable to secondary attacks from P-51 elements positioned 1,000 feet below initial engagement altitude. 0 American losses in this phase. The Americans didn't pursue damaged aircraft, instead maintaining position relative to bomber formations 3 miles distant, denying German pilots opportunities to regroup for renewed attacks. At 1346 hours, 18 FW-190A8s from JG-3 attempted diving attacks from port side at 450 mph indicated airspeed, employing high-speed slashing attacks that had succeeded against B-17 formations in 1943. At 1347 hours, P-51s from 4th Fighter Group engaged using vertical maneuvers impossible for heavier P-47s, climbing into German dive paths and forcing deflection angles exceeding 70 degrees where accurate gunnery became impossible. At 13:49 hours, all 18 FW-190s were destroyed or damaged beyond combat effectiveness, requiring immediate withdrawal. At 13:46 hours plus 42 seconds, Major Walter Esau's FW-190A8 destroyed. Kill time, 19 seconds. At 13:47 hours plus 8 seconds, Hauptmann Hans Philipps aircraft destroyed. Kill time, 22 seconds. At 13:47 hours plus 31 seconds, Oberleutnant Egon Mayer's aircraft destroyed. Kill time, 17 seconds. At 13:48 hours, Lieutenant Kurt Buligen's aircraft destroyed. Kill time, 21 seconds. 0 American losses in this engagement phase. The one-sided nature of combat reflected not just aircraft performance but tactical doctrine disparity. Germans attacked individually using courage and aggression. Americans fought systematically using coordinated mutual support, eliminating German numerical concentrations before they could deliver attacks. At 13:52 hours, 30 more German fighters from JG-11 arrived as reinforcements, attempting to exploit presumed American fuel exhaustion after sustained combat operations over 520 miles from English bases. Intelligence estimates, dating from January 1944 before P-51D deployment, calculated that American fighters operating at extreme range would possess maximum 15 minutes combat endurance before requiring withdrawal. The P-51s engaged reinforcing German aircraft with undiminished aggression, demonstrating fuel reserves sufficient for extended combat operations, contradicting all German intelligence estimates. At 13:53 hours, American fighters executed climbing attacks intercepting German reinforcements before they reached bomber altitude, preventing any coordinated assault development. At 13:58 hours, 24 of these 30 reinforcing aircraft were destroyed through systematic engagement. At 13:53 hours plus 41 seconds, Oberstleutnant Gordon Golob's Bf-109G-14 destroyed. Kill time, 18 seconds. At 13:54 hours plus 6 seconds, Major Hermann Graf's aircraft destroyed. Kill time, 20 seconds. At 13:54 hours plus 33 seconds, Hauptmann Gerhard Barkhorn's aircraft destroyed. Kill time, 15 seconds. The remaining 6 German fighters broke off immediately, diving for cloud cover at 8,000 feet using emergency power burning fuel at 240 gallons per hour, unsustainable rates requiring landing at forward airfields. 2 more fell during withdrawal phase. At 13:58 hours plus 52 seconds, Lieutenant Walter Krupinski's aircraft destroyed during disengagement. Kill time, 19 seconds. At 13:59 hours plus 18 seconds, Feldwebel Joseph Genuine's aircraft destroyed. Kill time, 22 seconds. Total losses: 66 German aircraft destroyed with catastrophic structural failure, 48 pilots killed instantly or in crashes, 14 pilots captured after parachute descent, 4 pilots wounded requiring evacuation. American losses: 3 P-51DS damaged by 20 cannon fragments and 13 machine gun hits. All pilots recovered safely to English bases. Aircraft repaired in 36 to 72 hours using readily available spare parts shipped from depots maintaining 120-day inventory buffers. Kill ratio: 66, 0 accounting only for aircraft destroyed, 66, 3 including damaged American aircraft, 22:1 ratio. The ammunition expended in this engagement: approximately 127,000 rounds of .50 caliber weighing 19,050 pounds, exceeded the entire Luftwaffe fighter force's monthly combat allocation of 112,000 rounds, distributed across 1,240 operational fighters. The fuel consumed during this single engagement: 14,200 gallons of 100-octane aviation gasoline, exceeded weekly allocations for the entire Berlin defense sector's fighter operations supporting 3 Jagdgeschwader. At 13:51 hours, Oberst Heinrich Müller was shot down while leading his 12-aircraft Staffel in a desperate frontal attack against a 4-aircraft P-51 element positioned 3,000 feet above bomber stream. His Bf-109G-14, specially modified with additional armor and upgraded armament, took concentrated fire from 2 Mustangs executing a scissors maneuver that placed them on alternating sides of his flight path, impossible to evade using standard defensive brakes. .2350 caliber rounds struck his aircraft in 2.4 seconds. 7 rounds in the engine penetrating cylinder heads and destroying crankshaft. 9 rounds in the cockpit area penetrating canopy and instrument panel, with 2 rounds striking Müller in chest and head. 5 rounds in the fuselage severing control cables. 2 rounds in the wing roots rupturing fuel tanks. Elapsed time from initial engagement to Müller's death, 18 seconds. Müller never transmitted final words. His radio destroyed in the first burst occurring at 13:51 hours plus 11 seconds. His aircraft tumbled through 12,000 feet of altitude, losing structural integrity at 8,400 feet, disintegrating completely before impacting in a forest 12 miles southeast of Berlin. Recovery crews found minimal remains the following day. The Knight's Cross with oak leaves was salvaged from wreckage and returned to his widow along with formal letter from Reichsmarschall Göring citing his heroic resistance against overwhelming odds. The letter didn't mention that his aggressive interception tactics, maintained despite contradicting evidence, had contributed to the systematic destruction of Germany's fighter force by sending pilots into combat against superior aircraft with inadequate tactical guidance. Lieutenant Hans Steiner watched the engagement from Luftwaffe headquarters Situation Room, monitoring radio transmissions that devolved from tactical coordination through disciplined reporting procedures to desperate survival calls requesting immediate support to final silence as frequencies went dead. Unit commanders reported unsustainable losses at 13:48 hours, requesting immediate withdrawal authorization, then went off frequency permanently at 13:52 hours. Steiner logged 66 confirmed losses cross-referenced with friendly airfield reports, confirming non-arrival of expected aircraft, largest single-day fighter casualties of the war exceeding October 14, 1943 Schweinfurt losses by 18 aircraft. Post-mission analysis conducted over 3 days showed German pilots had achieved 2 hits on bomber formations, both causing non-fatal damage repaired at English bases within 48 hours. The tactical objective, disrupting the bombing mission and destroying sufficient bombers to render future raids prohibitively expensive, had failed completely. Bombs fell on target with normal accuracy, destroying rail infrastructure and industrial facilities. The strategic situation had become mathematically hopeless when analyzed dispassionately. A captured American pilot, Captain Donald Blakesley of the 4th Fighter Group, shot down during a separate engagement on April 10, provided testimony during interrogation that revealed tactical doctrine Steiner found shocking in its aggressive employment of numerical advantages. We're not trying to defend the bombers anymore in the traditional escort sense. We're actively hunting you, using bombers as bait to draw Luftwaffe fighters into combat where our advantages guarantee favorable outcomes. Our orders from 8th Air Force Headquarters are to pursue enemy aircraft until destroyed, regardless of bomber formation position or tactical situation. The bombers can defend themselves adequately with formation firepower delivering 250 caliber machine guns per combat box. Our mission is fighter destruction, systematically degrading Luftwaffe capacity through attrition until they can't contest our airspace. This offensive employment of escort fighters represented revolutionary tactical thinking abandoning defensive mentality. Instead of passive protection requiring fighters to remain close to bomber formations, Americans had weaponized their range advantage, using bomber formations as bait drawing German fighters into combat where numerical superiority averaging 2, 7, 1 and qualitative advantages guaranteed favorable outcomes. Steiner recognized this as systematic annihilation doctrine, designed to destroy German fighter capability through deliberate attrition warfare, where Americans possessed infinite replacement capacity through overwhelming production, while Germany did not. The mathematics were absolute. Current loss rates would eliminate effective fighter defense within 60 days. May 1945, Interrogation Center 17, Wiesbaden. Hauptmann Wilhelm Fischer's testimony for Allied intelligence officers provided detailed analysis from the perspective of the man who had warned his superiors repeatedly about impending defeat, compiling reports that were systematically ignored by leadership committed to ideological narratives incompatible with mathematical reality. We were not defeated by better soldiers, but by better factories operating under superior economic systems. North American Aviation's single Inglewood plant produced 475 P-51s monthly, employing 42,000 workers. Germany's entire Messerschmitt production network across 17 facilities, scattered from Regensburg to Wiener Neustadt, achieved 540 Me-109s, monthly employing 84,000 workers. A single American factory outproduced our entire fighter industry while using half the labor, demonstrating productivity advantages of 3.81 per worker. This disparity appeared in every material category examined. Aluminum production favoring Americans 3.91, fuel production 15.1, ammunition manufacturing 12.1, spare parts availability 17.1, replacement engines 9.1. We fought with excellence developed through 4 years of continuous combat experience. They fought with abundance generated through industrial systems we couldn't match. Excellence cannot overcome abundance of this magnitude indefinitely when material consumption rates exceed replacement capacity. The mathematics were absolute. American productive capacity exceeded German output by factors ranging from 8 to 15, depending on category. We never had sustainable defensive capacity against this industrial avalanche, once Americans committed fully to fighter production. Fischer's analysis extended beyond simple production numbers to systemic advantages, compounding over time through operational sustainability. Americans maintained 60-day stockpiles of consumables, while we operated on 7-day inventories, requiring continuous production and transportation vulnerable to interdiction. Their pilots received 450 flight hours before combat assignment, including instrument training, gunnery practice, tactical formation flying, and emergency procedures. Our pilots received 112 hours average training, reduced from 240 hours in 1942 due to fuel shortages limiting training flights. Their aircraft underwent destructive testing validating reliability through statistical sampling, documenting mean time between failure rates, and implementing design improvements based on failure analysis. Our aircraft were repaired and improvised to extend service life because we lacked replacement components. These disparities compounded exponentially over operational time. A P-51 averaged 180 flight hours before major maintenance requiring engine replacement, with many aircraft exceeding 300 hours through proper maintenance and quality manufacturing. A Bf-109 averaged 64 flight hours before major engine overhaul, with frequent failures below this threshold due to material shortages forcing use of inferior alloys. American aircraft returned from missions with battle damage and were repaired to perfect condition using unlimited spare parts maintaining original specifications. Our aircraft accumulated damage across multiple missions because we lacked replacement components, degrading performance and reliability progressively. We patched bullet holes, welded cracks, improvised repairs using non-standard parts. This degraded performance by 15–20% compared to factory-fresh aircraft. We brought progressively inferior equipment to each engagement, while they brought progressively superior equipment maintained at peak specification. The spiral was irreversible once initiated, because material advantages compounded through operational degradation affecting our forces, while their forces maintained constant effectiveness. Lieutenant Hans Steiner's testimony described tactical evolution from the frontline perspective of a pilot who had flown 247 combat hours across 164 sorties between August 1943 and April 1944, witnessing transformation from German tactical dominance to systematic annihilation. I saw the P-51 first in March 1944 over Brunswick. The Americans demonstrated immediate advantages across all performance categories, speed exceeding ours by 35 mph at combat altitudes, range permitting sustained combat 520 miles from bases, firepower delivering 4.1 advantage in head-on engagements, and numbers averaging 2.71 superiority. They didn't just outproduce us quantitatively. They revolutionized production itself qualitatively. Their aircraft quality exceeded ours in reliability, durability, and performance consistency. Their pilots were well-trained with 450 hours before combat, well-fed receiving 4,200 calories daily, well-rested flying manageable sortie schedules. Our pilots were exhausted from continuous operations averaging 18 sorties monthly, malnourished receiving 2,100 calories daily, undertrained due to fuel shortages cutting training programs from 240 hours to 112 hours. We knew by April that the war was lost from an air power perspective. The P-51 made German airspace indefensible against strategic bombing. They could escort bombers anywhere in Germany with sufficient fuel reserves for extended combat operations. Our tactical advantages from 1943 vanished overnight. We couldn't engage bombers without fighting through fighter screens possessing every advantage. We couldn't avoid combat because they hunted us actively, sweeping ahead of bomber formations to destroy German fighters before we reached attack positions. Every mission became survival-focused rather than objective-focused. Kill ratios that had favored us 8:1 in October 1943 reversed to 15:1 in their favor by April 1944 within 60 days. No amount of tactical excellence, courage, or fighting spirit compensates for that disparity in material capability and numerical advantage. Additional testimonies compiled from multiple Luftwaffe officers across different ranks and units revealed consistent themes about industrial disparity determining campaign outcomes regardless of tactical performance. We brought swords forged with excellent craftsmanship to a naval bombardment delivering unlimited high-explosive shells. Their excess production capacity exceeded our maximum effort achieved through total mobilization. They could lose 400 fighters monthly through combat attrition, accidents, and operational losses, and replace them in 6 days of normal production. We couldn't sustain 20 fighters lost monthly without drawing down operational strength. They maintained 8,600 fighters in England as operational reserves plus 1,800 monthly production surplus accumulating in strategic reserves. We maintained 1,240 operational fighters with no reserves and monthly losses of 280 aircraft, exceeding production of 247 aircraft. The mathematics were implacable. Every mission reduced our effective strength by percentages we couldn't recover while their strength increased through accumulated surplus production. They absorbed losses that would have been strategically catastrophic for us, requiring immediate operational cessation and continued operations without pause or reduction in sortie tempo. This wasn't aerial combat in the traditional sense of matched opponents testing tactical skill. This was industrial obliteration applied through military means, using overwhelming material advantages to achieve systematic destruction of defending forces. Production statistics stated by German intelligence officers during comprehensive debriefings confirmed the impossibility of their strategic position once American production reached full capacity. American fighter production averaged 7,200 aircraft monthly across all types in 1944, including P-51 Mustangs, P-47 Thunderbolts, P-38 Lightnings, and naval variants. German fighter production averaged 1,850 monthly, combining Me-109 and FW-190 across all variants. Single American factories exceeded entire German industrial sectors in output and efficiency. North American Aviation's Inglewood plant, 475 P-51s monthly from 42,000 workers. Total German Me-109 production across all facilities, 540 monthly from 84,000 workers, half the productivity per worker. Republic Aviation's Farmingdale plant, 400 P-47s monthly. Total German FW-190 production, 1,310 monthly, but split between fighter and ground attack variants, reducing air superiority capacity. The Americans achieved this output while maintaining higher quality standards requiring 0 defects, providing superior pilot training averaging 450 hours, maintaining larger operational reserves permitting sustained high-tempo operations, and supporting global military operations across 2 theaters simultaneously in Europe and Pacific. We concentrated all available resources on European defense, implemented total mobilization redirecting civilian production to military purposes, employed slave labor from concentration camps and occupied territories, and still couldn't match their excess capacity generated from voluntary free labor. The war was unwinnable from a production standpoint by late 1943, but institutional denial prevented acknowledgement until military collapse was imminent and irreversible. Fischer's final assessment addressed leadership failures that prevented adaptation when adaptation might have mitigated catastrophic losses. Reichsmarschall Göring dismissed my analyses as defeatist propaganda designed to undermine morale when presented in January 1944. Oberst Müller refused to acknowledge American superiority despite mounting casualties documented in daily loss reports, attributing losses to pilot error and inadequate fighting spirit rather than material inferiority. Institutional culture throughout Luftwaffe command structure punished accurate reporting when it contradicted leadership's preferred narrative of inevitable German victory. I presented mathematical evidence of inevitable defeat with statistical analysis, production comparisons, and loss rate projections in January 1944, showing 90-day timeline to combat ineffectiveness. I was transferred to administrative duties processing fuel allocation requests. Müller continued aggressive interception tactics that accelerated attrition, refusing to adopt defensive tactics conserving forces, until he was killed in April during a frontal attack against superior numbers. We could have adopted defensive tactics minimizing casualties, conserved forces for critical defensive operations protecting essential industries, trained pilots more thoroughly using reduced sortie tempo, focused limited resources on strategic targets rather than fighting losing battles over every raid. But this required admitting weakness and accepting temporary loss of air superiority, which leadership refused to do based on ideological commitments requiring belief in German superiority. The P-51 didn't just defeat us technically through performance advantages. It exposed command failures that had been masked by tactical excellence when we faced inferior opposition. Once confronted with superior aircraft, superior training, superior logistics, and superior numbers simultaneously, our institutional dysfunctions became fatal. The mathematics proved absolute. Industrial capacity determined strategic outcomes regardless of tactical performance when material disparities exceeded 3:1 ratios. The P-51 Mustang proved that democratic industrial systems possessed inherent advantages over totalitarian command economies when prosecuting total war. Free workers at North American Aviation's Inglewood plant outproduced slave labor at Messerschmitt factories by factors of 3 despite Germany's complete resource mobilization. Democratic cooperation between government, industry, and labor created efficient production systems that exceeded authoritarian central planning. Industrial abundance generated from free market capitalism, directed toward military purposes, buried ideological superiority under 96,000 tons of precision-manufactured aluminum, configured as long-range fighter escorts. March 4, 1944. Oberst Heinrich Müller had laughed at American industrial capacity, dismissing intelligence reports about P-51 production rates as impossible exaggerations. April 8, 1944. He died in an 18-second engagement. One of 66 German pilots lost that day to systematic aerial annihilation. His mockery became history's most quantifiable miscalculation, measured in 58,000 Luftwaffe casualties, 4,950 aircraft destroyed, and strategic air superiority permanently transferred to Allied forces. The confident dismissal of American industrial capacity in that Berlin office proved more consequential than any tactical defeat, because it prevented adaptation when adaptation might have mitigated catastrophe. The lesson remains applicable. Dismissing democratic nations as weak because they prefer peace, or underestimating free people's productive capacity when committed to existential conflict, invites catastrophic miscalculation. The P-51 Mustang materialized American industrial philosophy in aluminum and steel, demonstrating that democratic systems could produce weapons of superior quality in overwhelming quantities when motivated by necessity. Totalitarian regimes excel at short-term military mobilization, directing resources through centralized command. But sustained industrial warfare rewards efficient production systems, technological innovation, and human capital development, all areas where free societies possess structural advantages. The 15:1 kill ratios ultimately reflected not just aircraft performance but systemic superiority. Better training, superior logistics, adequate nutrition, technological innovation, quality manufacturing, and infinite replacement capacity. These advantages emerge from democratic institutions that totalitarian systems cannot replicate without abandoning the ideological foundations justifying their existence. The P-51 didn't just dominate German fighters technically. It proved that free societies could outfight authoritarian regimes through industrial means, a lesson that transcends its immediate tactical application.